I have titled today's in the news commentary as Untying the Knots of Interconnectivity. A knot is a semi-permanent thing, and it's only one thing that you tie, a rope is tied and a knot is formed. So this title may not sound really meaningful, but there is surely, an understanding we can have. Because with the events that we are seeing as to what is happening from the last 2-3 years, some things and some connections are all being broken in the world. For example, I just heard today or read today, I did not heard read today, that about 1/3 of the believers who used to go to church prior to COVID are no more going to church. So they have disconnected off from the church. Then because of COVID, many people have unplugged off, they've basically untied themselves off from the circumstance situations that they in this world that they go through. Because of this war, many people are getting disconnected. Because of all the riots that happened, specifically that is an American thing, there you see society being torn apart, people groups fighting against each other. Things that were cohering together or co-living together or they were adhering together are getting separated, both in society as well as in the world, as well as amongst nations. This is also true amongst nations. And this title that I put, Untying the Knot of Interconnectivity, what I was specifically pointing at, or what I'm specifically pointing out at, is nations that were connected together by globalism is soon but steadily they are spreading out from that cohesion, that joined cohesion that they had before. That is breaking apart and turning out to be blocks, right? The whole world or the nations are gathering together along with their friends and they are forming blocks around the world, or slowly but steadily. And that started with COVID, because globalism actually made it difficult for medicines that are made in China to be transported to the United States. Transportation was a problem. Rich countries that were depending on poorer countries for manufacturing and other things found it difficult to get stuff on their shores. And so extreme, globalism brought difficulties. And so people started rethinking. When I'm talking people, I'm talking about elites in nations, started rethinking and saying, we cannot allow everything to be made in China or other places, because that's going to be dangerous in the long run. So economically, some nations, I'm not saying all nations, but some nations economically are already thinking of unplugging themselves from this extreme globalism. When I say globalism, I'm talking about all the nations coming together and working together and manufacturing for each other and living each other, that connectivity, right? For example, wheat in the Middle East comes from Russia and Ukraine. 25% of the wheat is provided by Russia and Ukraine. Gas comes from Iran as far as India is concerned. Gas in Europe comes from Russia. So nations are interconnected together because of their needs. But slowly and steadily, what is happening right now is, previously it was just one whole global community. Now slowly the global community is kind of splitting apart into blocks. And it is not only noticed by people who are watching it, it is noticed by elites in societies. Especially this war has brought a split between East and the West. For example, major Eastern powers or major Eastern countries like India, China, Iran, right? they are some of the powerful nations in the East. They are not going along with the West as far as Russia is concerned. Russia is both East-West power because it's got its footprint in both parts of both hemispheres. So what is happening there is, slowly but steadily, things are being split apart. By the way, biblically, this should happen, right? I don't know if many noticed it, but remember when a lot of people were talking about globalism, and we believers were thinking that globalism is going to bring one world government, and one world government is going to bring one united one united one antichrist who will unite everybody in this world, and there'll be one antichrist who will rule the whole world. So we thought that globalism, or I used to think that globalism was a march towards the end times. But later, when I started reading the book of Revelation, especially Revelation chapter 17, let us look at that portion. It's very evident in Revelation chapter 17. It's not just the Antichrist alone. There will be 10 kings around the world. So if you turn to Revelation chapter 17, that is the chapter of the doom of Babylon and the mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots. She is sitting on this wild beast, and she is being taken about by this beast. The angel himself gives an interpretation of who the beast is and what this beast represents. By the way, this beast represents the beast that is going to show up in the last days. But the head of these beasts have already shown up in different parts of different times and different age. Verse 7 describes the beast, and the angel said to me, the beast is described by the angel. Here the angel is talking to John, and the angel said to me, why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. So this beast has 7 heads and 10 horns on it. Remember, the beast is the body plus the head plus the horn. So even if one head goes, the other heads are still there. The beast is still alive. It has a head. Head is a center. It's the brain, and head leads. And horn is the place where the beast exerts its power. So even if one head is gone, there is still 6 more heads, right? The beast is still alive. Now, the angel also goes on and explains what the heads mean. Verse 8, the beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come. So the beast in itself has a present, future, a past, present, and a future reality. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come out of the abyss and go to destruction. By the way, the Antichrist is represented again by this particular terminology, the beast that comes out of the abyss. That's a phrase that is used for the Antichrist. The beast that comes out of the abyss. So the beast in itself, in a sense, is and we know that the Antichrist is represented by the beast. And those who dwell on the earth, whose name are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast that he was and he is not and will come. Verse 9, here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads, here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Remember, this beast is carrying a harlot. By the way, understand one thing, this beast has a past reality, a present reality in the sense of when John the Apostle was living, and the angel is saying this beast will have a future reality. So the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And they are 7 kings. So the heads represents Not only the mountains on which the woman sits, but the heads are also a representation of 7 kings. Now, 5 have fallen, which means 5 are already done. One is that one king was already there at the time of John. So that is 5 plus 1, 6. And the other has not yet come. The 7th one has not yet come. So this beast represents 7 heads, or beast has 7 heads. And these 7 heads represent kings. Some have come in the past. One is already there in the time of John. The 7th one, which is one that is remaining, is going to come. And the other is yet to come. And when he comes, he must remain for a while, which is the 7th one. When he comes, he must remain for a while. Verse 11, the beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th and is one of the 7. So there you need wisdom. That is why in verse 9 it says, here is the mind which has wisdom. Remember, the beast, which is the body, is always part of the head, or the head sits on the body. So the angel is saying, of course, the 7th head, right? The 7th head is the 7th king that is going to come, but it is attached to the beast. And the beast is the 8th king, but he is the 8th one along with the 7th, right? It says here, the beast which was not and is, the beast which was, verse 11, and is not, is himself also an 8th and one of the 7, and he goes to destruction. So what is going to happen is the beast, which is the body of the beast, the king, which is the 7th head, is going to come, and both of them will be at the same time showing up here on earth, right? The beast and the head. Verse 12. Here you have the wisdom or the understanding of the 10 horns. Remember, 7 heads and 10 horns. 7 heads and 10 horns. 5 head already came before John. The sixth one was on the day of John, when John was alive. The 6th head was there, which is the 6th king. The 7th king is going to come, which is the 7th head. And when the 7th head shows up, the body, which is the beast, will be the 8th along with the 7th. So both of them, the beast and the king, will be present. In the future, which is during the Antichrist kingdom. The beast and the king will be present. Then in verse 12, the angel gives the interpretation of the 10 horns. This beast is what? 7 heads and 10 horns. What does these 10 horns mean? The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings. Again, those are kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. So when the beast gets authority, which is when the Antichrist gets authority, the 10 kings around the world will also get authority. 10 kings. Along with this one Antichrist, 10 kings in this world will get authority. And what will these kings do? Verse 13, they have one purpose. Verse 12, but they receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour, for a particular time period. Verse 13, they have one purpose. What is the purpose of the 10 kings? And they give their power and authority to the beast. So what happens is this. In the last days, along with the Antichrist, 10 kings will rise up around the world. So God gives authority not just to the Antichrist alone, but to 10 kings around the world. But what will these 10 kings do? They will give their authority to whom? To the Antichrist. That is how the Antichrist is going to rule around the world. For example, I'll just give you let us say, just for the sake of an example, Right now, let us say Russia is a major one-eighth of the planet is basically Russian, the country of Russia, the nation of Russia. Let us say that for 3 years, Putin gives the authority of Russia to the US president for 3 years, right? For specifically in here, it says specifically 1 hour. I'm just saying just for 3 years. That is the kind of thing that is going to happen during the days of the Antichrist. 10 kings will be given authority along with the Antichrist. God is the one who gives authority. But the 10 kings, what will they do? They will give their authority to the Antichrist. That is how the Antichrist is going to rule the whole world. So for the 10 kings to rise up, naturally, this world have to go back to its older ways of setting up blocks around the world. There should be power blocks around the world, and you will see 10 kings rising up. And you know what? This Antichrist will be given their power. They themselves will give. Okay? It's not that the Antichrist will go grab it. They themselves will give their power to the Antichrist himself is a warrior. We see that in Daniel chapter 12. He himself is a warrior. So he is powerful. But these 10 kings will be motivated by God to give their authority to the Antichrist. So what is going to happen? When you come to the last days, right, you will see the rise of the Antichrist. You should see that. Number two, you should also see or notice the rise of these 10 kings around the world. For these 10 kings to rise up, the world has to go back to its old block-based power base around the world. For example, during the Second World War, European nations were Western, basically called the Western powers, the major powers or whatever it is. And then you had the Axis powers, which is Germany, Japan, and Italy. They're called the Axis powers. And the European powers were basically France, Britain, and then the United States later joined along with Russia. Right? So this was a block-based arrangement at that time. There were major powers around the world. Powers that gather together to make blocks. That is exactly what is going to happen as we move towards the end days. By the way, this war, Ukraine-Russia war that is happening right now, is basically the starting point of that separating into power blocks. Okay? Remember, before Russia-Ukraine war, the world was a unipolar world. And you will hear this in geopolitics if you are a person who reads and if you like geopolitics, you've been hearing this unipolar world, which means that there was only one superpower in this world, and that is the United States. Whatever the United States said would happen, or they can force their will on other nations. That's called a unipolar world. But Putin always had this, he never liked this fact of a unipolar world, and he was always challenging it verbally. But this month, March of this month, this year, what did he do? He challenged it physically by means of force. In a sense, he was saying, that's why, the foreign minister Lavrov, I think a couple of days back, he said, this is no more a unipolar world. Now there are blocks. By the way, this is exactly what the Bible is teaching. But I know, when there was a unipolar world, everybody was talking about one world system and the world is going to be under one man. That is true. But how is that going to happen? It is going to first be a multipolar world, and then from the multipolar world, it is going to go back to a unipolar world under the Antichrist. Okay? So we Christians have a problem of discerning things. There is a problem of discernment, because whenever we see some major events happening, we immediately jump to a conclusion and we basically say, hey, Lord is coming because this is happening. instead of waiting to think and understand what is really going on, right? These 10 kings should rise up along with the Antichrist. You should see the rise of the Antichrist and the rise of the 10 kings. And then these 10 kings will give authority over to Antichrist. And this rise of the 10 kings is what you see in Daniel also. Let us turn to Daniel. In that statue, the vision of the great idol or the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw, Daniel gives an interpretation of what the different parts of that idol mean. Let's turn to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, and this is what, I think we all know what the idol represents, or basically what it's made out of. So they will just read the interpretation. Verse 36 onwards, this was the dream. Now we will tell you its interpretation before the king. Verse 37, you, O king, are the king of kings, to whom God of heaven has given the kingdom and the power, the strength, and its glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hands and has caused you to rule over them. You are head of gold. So Babylon was the head of gold. After you will arise another kingdom inferior to you. So inferior to Babylon. See, think about it. Head of gold means that was pure monarchy, where not only did Nebuchadnezzar had, it was a golden kingdom, which means that the gold represents the power and might. Nebuchadnezzar had complete power. He had, not only did he have complete power over people, he had power over animals, he had power over nations, and he had power over beasts. That is complete power, right? That is complete power. When you consider the Persian Empire, which comes next, remember, Persian Empire, and as far as Nebuchadnezzar was concerned, whatever he willed, he did it. His word was the final word. Whatever he decided, he did. His desire was the rule of the land. Well, when he came to the Persian Empire was different. The king couldn't do whatever he wanted. He had to always turn to the nobles. Right? That's what you see in the book of Esther, where Ahasuerus, he consults with his nobles. But you never see the Babylonian emperor Nebuchadnezzar doing that. Nebuchadnezzar just does whatever he wants. And it happens. Okay? So that is why the Babylonian empire is represented by gold. Because that was a prized, pure monarchy. It is pure rule. It is the ultimate exercise of power that was given to Nebuchadnezzar. But the next kingdom after you, verse 39, there will arise another kingdom inferior to you than another. So inferior to you, that is the Persian kingdom, which is made out of silver. And another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. That will be the Greek Empire. Bronze represents the Greek Empire. Verse 40 onwards, it's basically the abdomen and downwards, right? There will be, verse 40, then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron, inasmuch as the iron crushes and shatters all things. Like iron that breaks in pieces, it will crush and break all these in pieces. All these in the sense the above kingdom. That is why if you look into the stomach of the Roman Empire, you'll see the Babylonian Empire, and you'll see the Persian Empire, and you'll see also the Greek Empire in it. Because the Babylonian Empire, the Roman Empire eats up everything. But then in verse 41, so there you have the four kingdoms, right? Verse 40 talks about the fourth kingdom, which we know, which is represented by the abdomen and the legs, which is made out of iron. That is, the fourth kingdom is the Roman Empire. Verse 41, in that you saw the feet and the toes partly of. So now you have a change of material, right? Every change of material is a new kingdom. Gold head, silver breast, and then you have the torso area, which is bronze. Every change of material was a new kingdom. Okay, don't forget that. And then from bronze to iron, it was another new empire, which is the Roman Empire. Now, here you see a change of material again, because along, of course, it has the similarity of the Roman Empire in as much as it is iron, but it is mixed with clay. So another material is added to it. So it looks Roman. The fifth, it's not called the fifth because it comes from the iron, it comes from the Roman Empire. So that's why it's not called the fifth empire. But you see a change, right? From pure iron to iron and clay. A so-called, you can basically say you see an image or kind of a shadow of the fifth empire, which is like the Roman Empire, but it is a mix. It is a mix of iron and clay. So verse 41 say, inasmuch as you saw the feet and the toes, which is the bottom part of the body, after the leg, right? 2 legs, you have the feet. They are partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom, but it will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you see the iron mixed with common clay. Because there are 2 materials in here, it will be a divided kingdom, because it's iron and clay. By the way, what does iron and clay represent? When it was gold, it was pure gold, right? When it was silver, it was pure silver. When it was bronze, it was pure bronze, which was, there was no other mix of materials. It is pure. But in this last kingdom, the feet is a mixture of iron and clay. It is not as strong as iron, but at the same time, it's got the strength of iron also. So it will be a mix of a very large group of people. It'll be a mix of many nations, many group of people. As the one of the feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong and part of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay. They will combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. Think about, what does Russia want? Russia wants Ukraine to be part of it. But Ukraine doesn't want anything to do with Russia. Though Russia wants to make it a part, Ukraine saying, no, we don't want to be part of it. And that is the iron and clay well, it's not a mix yet, right? It's not a mix yet. But if, let us say, Russia by means of power and diplomacy is able to bring Ukraine into its orbit, and Ukraine kind of willingly, it's just like a divorced couple living together, kind of willingly, is willing to go with Russia. That is iron mixed with clay. It is not a very strong bond. It can let go at any time, but together it has the strength of iron, but at the same time, there's no internal unity. In the last days, when the Antichrist rises up, along with that, remember the 2 feet has how many? 5 plus 5, 10 toes. 10 toes represent 10 kings. Right? Again, you see the final kingdom, which comes from the Roman Empire, because it's got iron in it. It's also clay, because man is made out of mud, so it's also human. And you see the mix of it together, but there are 10 toes. Those 10 toes represent 10 kings. So that will be the final kingdom. So you see a pattern forming in Revelation. And you see an image of that here, though it's not explicitly said, the feet and the 10 toes are represented here. And it's explained separately from the iron. It is not said this is the 5th kingdom, because it's part of the Roman Empire, but it certainly has 10 kings in it. So, what I'm trying to say is this: we should not forget the reality that along with the Antichrist, 10 kings will rise up. So, nowadays, when we believers look at the events that are happening, we look at Putin and say, is he the Antichrist? Or many people, is he the Antichrist? He seems to be like the Antichrist. Remember, all these people that are rising up in war and creating blocks for themselves are not necessarily Antichrist. Because we need to understand, Antichrist will rise up. One person will be Antichrist. But along with him, these 10 kings also have to come up. And some of these things that are happening right now in the world, maybe, and I'm using the word maybe. And in my mind, I'm kind of certain. But when I teach, I don't make I don't make it a doctrinal issue. But if we are watching carefully, because none of these things you can say for sure, it's only that when it comes up, this is what it is. So don't forget that these 10 kings have to rise up. So what does this person say? By the way, this is actually the top money manager. This guy's company, BlackRock, has about one third, I think if I'm not wrong, one third the size of, no, equivalent to about half of US GDP. This guy's company, a money manager, he's got half of US GDP, money equivalent to about half of US GDP. So it's that half of US GDP. Now think about all the dollars that are generated inside the US for a year. Half of that is in his pocket. When I say in his pocket, or with his company. And see what he's saying. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, whose firm's overseas investment equivalent to about half of US GDP, has predicted that efforts to punish Russia over its invasion of Ukraine would lead to unraveling, which means what? Unknotting or untying, unraveling of globalism as decision makers reconsider their foreign vulnerabilities. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has put an end to globalization. Put an end, that's what he thinks. Remember, when you are dealing with this sums of money, you need to know what is going on, because you are taking this money and investing. You don't want to invest thinking that globalism is still alive. And that's exactly what he's saying. You know what he's saying? He's basically saying, now we'll have to look not from the perspective of globalism, we'll have to look in some other perspective in investing the money. We'll have to look at countries that are according to our philosophy. Things that on Thursday, in a letter to the investors, we had already seen connectivity between nations, companies, and even people strained by 2 years of pandemic. It has left many communities and people feeling isolated and looking inwards. I believe this has made the polarization and extremist behavior we are seeing across society today. United States of Apple, Arizona, this is on the other side. This is where you see the Antichrist tech rising up. This is the birth of digital driver's license, and Arizona is already giving it to some of the drivers. Arizona is now offering digital copies of driver's license and state-issued IDs on iPhones and Apple Watches. One thing with digital technology is this: if anything goes digital, you can be easily tracked, right? It can be easily managed and easily tracked, both. At least 11 other states are currently considering similar plans. As one professor of technology ethics pointed out, Apple is now sort of trying to vertically integrate your whole life into its phone. But the expansion is facing some pushback, with some worried about the privacy issues in Apple's growing influence. Currently, very few states will accept a digital driver's license as valid, and it has yet to be revealed whether other states have agreed to join Arizona, which, eventually this is going to happen. We will not have a paper ticket, neither will we have a paper license. Everything is going to be digital. Nowadays, ticket flying international is digital. How long do you think a state ID is going to be? How long would it take for a state ID to be digital? Not too long. While the digital licenses will be considered as a valid ID in certain cases, Arizona residents will still need to hand over the official physical driver's license and government ID if they are pulled over by the police or carded at a bar. Digital licenses will currently only be accepted at select security screening checkpoints in Phoenix airports. Beef is going to go. Well, they are pushing for it. Bill Gates is saying you need to now start eating vegetized beef. By the way, let us understand one thing. These people are motivated by a different spirit altogether. This is basically an antichrist spirit. Remember what Paul says in 2 Timothy. All food is blessed by God, purified by prayer and word, and good to eat. But these people make it a moral issue. They don't make it a Christian issue, but they'll eventually make it a Christian issue. Also, how can you kill an animal and eat, you're killing an animal. They'll not consider killing the babies as killing, but surely they'll consider as killing these animals as killing, as murder. Bill Gates recently said that he's just going, well, think about it. He has been always like this, just that money now gives him the ability to do the things that he wants. Bill Gates recently said that he believes rich nations would help the global fight against climate change by consuming only plant-based meat products instead of beef. I don't know how that's related. It may be related in some way. Of course, this meat-producing industry will go down, will go out of business, and that will reduce their carbon footprint probably. In a recent interview with Technology Review, Gates discussed his new book, How to Avoid Climate Disaster, and emphasized the benefit. Just a second. How to avoid climate disaster and emphasize the benefits rich nations could produce by moving to 100% synthetic beef. I do think all rich countries should move to 100% synthetic beef. Gates said when asked about how countries can help to reduce methane emissions when it comes to food production. Yeah, food production. Now, if you want plants to, well, probably it's just in these kind of organisms that methane is produced. When it comes to food production, you can get used to the taste difference and the claim is that they are going to make it taste even better over time. Yeah, that's exactly what they say, isn't it? You will own nothing and you will be happy. That's what the World Economic Forum said. So they are trying to dispose us of everything, and then they're going to force you to eat whatever they want you to eat. And they're saying, you'll like it, don't worry. That's the world that we are coming to. God-given freedoms, pretty soon we will understand one thing, that the freedom that we were trying to gain, putting God on the side, is going to be very expensive. In fact, people, they foolishly think that, with all the rules and regulations that God has put in the scriptures, it's so restrictive. Why is God like this? And you throw God to the garbage heap of history or garbage heap of your life, what's going to happen is you're going to become a slave of another man. US to issue gender-neutral passports. The church, I think some of the church at least decided that, God created man with whatever gender they like. And now the nation is going to force it upon people. The US Department of State announced on Thursday that it will offer a third X-gender option on passports as of April 11th. The passport change is one of the host of transgender-focused policies rolled out by the Biden administration. The last days will be like what? Sodom and Gomorrah, sexual immorality, gender confusion, gender dysphoria. All these things are coming up. Think about the situation that is going on. You have parents nowadays in America They live together, but they have several partners. Children are themselves gay or lesbians. The father walks as an effeminate person, right? I'm not saying that's a typical family. That is where we are going with this freedom. That is where we are going. This is exactly what happened in the Roman Empire and in the Greek Empire also. But we started Judeo-Christian and we are moving on to these kind of wild realities. And they will have consequences, existential consequences in our lives. I had talked about this probably several weeks back or months back. By the way, this lady, I think she was a Finnish parliamentarian or a parliament minister. She is now acquitted. Remember, her name is Pavi. I forget her last name. She was actually, because of her Christian views about gay, lesbian, LGBTQ, the Finnish prosecutor brought a case against her, but she was acquitted. I'm grateful for having had this chance to stand up for freedom of speech. The member of the Finnish parliament reacts to her acquittal on 30th March 2022. Think about it. She just wrote a tract, quoting some Bible verses. And the Finnish prosecutor said this is hate speech. Quoting Bible verses is hate speech. Right? That's what the Western democracies, I wouldn't say Christian democracies, Western democracies have turned out to be now. It is alarming that in a country that ranked third in the rule of law index, I have been criminally charged for voicing my deeply held beliefs that are based on classical Christianity. Yeah. And by the way, I think in Finland, Presbyterianism is the state church. They have a state church, if I'm not wrong. Even then, this is what they do to people who believe in true Christianity. Here is a video. I hope it's a video. I think it's a video because I put it as a video. Hopefully it'll run as a video. Now, I forget the name of the pastor. I'm sorry about it. But there are many pastors right now, and they do a good job. To be very frank, they do a very good job. And I like to hear them. Though all of them are pre-tribulation rapture proponents, I like to hear them. And the reason for that is this. Now they are slowly but steadily changing the tune. They still hold on to pre-tribulation rapture. But many of them are thinking, you know what, we were expecting to leave a little bit earlier than this. Things are getting worse day by day. And slowly pastors are now turning to the fact or telling their congregation, you know what, we will have to go through some very dark days. Now they are slowly doing it because, one of the attractive things with pre-tribulation rapture and what they've been saying for a long time is this. We will not go through tribulation. Now, there in itself there's a big confusion. Lies a big confusion, and the confusion is what does tribulation mean? So they say we will not go through the 7-year time period, the 7 years before the end of the age, because that 7 years is going to be tribulation according to them. So if you ask them, what will be the things that will be happening in 7 years? They will say wars and rumors of wars, because whatever is written in Matthew 24, according to them, will start and happen when? During that start of the 7-year time period. The birth pang and all those things start at the start of the 7-year time period. Now, of course, there is different explanations for it. So they were all expecting to leave before all these things happen. Or, even at this point right now, life is not extremely difficult, but they can see through times and they can understand, you know what? It is not as we expected. We may have to go through some very difficult times. Okay. So I have put the name, title to this section, and I will do it in the next couple of weeks, because this will also teach us and give us a confirmation that what we've been saying is true. Because even at this point, some of the pre-tribulation rapture proponents are slowly, they have not, by the way, they have not changed or moved away from what they believe. They're still thinking that they are going to go before the Antichrist shows up. But now they have slowly come to this point where, they think we have to go through some terrible times. So here is a pastor that is reading a letter, and he himself confirms the fact that, yeah, we may not go through tribulation, but we will go through some difficult times. Hopefully this will play.
People that sent me the article is a person named Kelly, and Kelly wrote this, and I think it's worth letting her words sink in. Think of her words. She said this: I've studied the Great Reset for years, the New World Order for years, but this article lays out Israel's place. I didn't see this coming. I'm left with a sick feeling that we might be here longer than I thought. Listen, let those words sink in.
We might be here longer than we thought. And the pastor is saying, let that words sink in. So longer than we thought means what? They were already expecting to go, right? The pre-tribulation rapture proponents taught their people that we are not going to go through even these kind of, not this, the trouble that we are going through is nothing when compared to what's going to happen. But they can see that we are going to go through some severe times ahead. And so slowly but steadily, there are many preachers, and most of the preachers have now, though they were mocking before, they were mocking people who believed in mid-tribulation or post-tribulation or even pre-wrath. They would say, God is going to beat up his bride and then take her up. They considered tribulation to be, beating up the bride and taking her up, right? And so they used to mock. They used to literally mock other proponents, other rapture proponents. But now they are rethinking. But they are not genuinely coming. Well, they may not be sure yet. They still have a chance for their doctrine to be true. And that's the reason why they have let go of the fact that nothing is going to happen. We will go without any trouble. That they have let go. They now suspect that they are going to go through some severe times of trouble. Let us make sure that, though these things are happening and they look to be, now the intensity of that Russian-Ukraine war that is going on is gone. Something new will come again that will rile us all up. And for the last 2 years, it's one after the other. But in the meanwhile, let us make firm that, number one, what are we looking for? What should we see? How should we interpret things? And let us make sure that we ourselves are prepared. That all these things will not catch us by surprise. When a thing has not happened, you can look and see some things are going to happen in the future. There may be several, explanations. But when it happens, you know what explanation is true. It is not a surprise to you because you have already considered that matter that is going to come ahead of you. Likewise, we should also, through the scriptures, consider what is going to come. We may not be able to say for sure this is what it is, but why are prophecies given? When it happens, you will know and you'll be able to understand. If you had discerned, if you have interpreted the scriptures correctly, when a matter happens, you will know, okay, this was in the scriptures, God has already said it, and it has happened, praise the Lord. Jesus tells his disciples, I am telling you this in advance, so that when it happens, you may know. So prophecy in the scriptures, especially with regard to the second coming of the Lord, it's for that purpose. When it happens, we will know because it's already spoken of, right? When all the other people in this world who disregarded the scripture and they walk away from the scriptures, they don't care for the Lord and his words. When they are in terrible trial and trouble, we may also go through the trial and trouble, but we know that God, the Lord Jesus, has already spoken about this, right? And there is a comfort. We know that this is already ordained, and we know the Lord is in charge of these matters. We have comfort because of that. But for the unbelievers, they'll be thoroughly in distress. Therefore, let the Lord enable us to understand these things and to establish ourselves in the truth, and also give us a clear discernment that we may be able to, have a spiritual eye to understand these matters. May the Lord bless us. Praise the Lord. Would one of